Hello, scholars. This is Mr. Myers doing lesson 2.5, The Powers and Limits of Congress. Our objectives for today are to understand the powers of Congress, both expressed and implied, the limits on congressional power, and then non-legislative powers such as advice and consent, electoral powers, and then the powers of impeachment and the power to investigate. As always, take good notes and let's begin. So the first thing we're going to discuss are the expressed powers of Congress. These are powers that are listed directly in the Constitution under Article 1, Section 8, and they're often referred to as enumerated powers or delegated powers. So I want to make sure that you know all three of those terms mean the same thing. Expressed powers, enumerated powers, which means numbered or kind of written down, spelled out, and delegated powers. All the same thing. Now, in this list, you want to pause and write a couple of these down. You need to be familiar with powers 1 through 8, 18, and then clauses 11, 12, and then generally clauses 13 through 16. Now, the Founding Fathers were smart enough to know that there's no way they would be able to articulate every single thing that Congress would need to do for all eternity. So they added something to this list called the Necessary and Proper Clause. Congress is granted the flexibility to make all laws necessary and proper in carrying out its expressed powers. In other words, Congress can do all of these things we've written down and anything necessary and proper to achieve those things. This is often referred to as the elastic clause because it expands the power of Congress. It stretches it like a rubber band to be able to deal with the areas of law it would not otherwise have jurisdiction over. And the vast majority of cases in which implied powers are used by Congress almost all deal with interstate commerce because in our globalized world today, virtually nothing is produced solely within one state. So you can see on the right that a whole host of congressional actions like raising minimum wage, banning racial discrimination in public facilities, and requiring Americans to buy health insurance all could be done because Congress has the expressed power to regulate interstate commerce, and all of those things are some way related to the expressed power of interstate commerce. So while Congress can do lots of things under the auspices of the Elastic Clause, it can't do everything. So under Article 1, Section 9, right after the enumerated and expressed powers are articulated, you have three different things that Congress can't do. We've already talked about these. A reminder that Congress can't suspend habeas corpus, that basic idea that if you're going to be charged with a crime, you have to be done so publicly. No ex post facto laws can be passed punishing someone for an action that wasn't illegal when that action was taken, and bills of attainder, which basically allow for immediate arrest and detainment of an official without due process of law. You also have limits within the amendments. If you think about the First Amendment, the language is very much saying something that Congress can't do. The language is Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So just in the First Amendment, you have about 5 different things that are expressly prohibited from the government taking action on. Of course, you could look at the rest of the Bill of Rights and see there are prohibitions against quartering soldiers, illegal search and seizure, and so on and so forth. There's also the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which basically says that all powers not expressly given to the federal government are reserved to the states or to the people, respectively. Of course, the ultimate prohibition in terms of congressional limitation is the will of the voters, right? Every 2 years, we have a federal election where the will of the people is heard, and ultimately, if congressional members are doing shady stuff, they're going to be voted out of office. However, with that incumbency rate being what it is, that doesn't happen as much as I think we would like. Ironically, it says here, while re-election rates nearly always top 80%, approval ratings of Congress is almost always below 20%. People tend to like their particular Congress people, but hate the rest of them. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but there it is. Now, the next 2 slides deal with the non-legislative powers of Congress. There are 4 of them. The first is advice and consent, and this pretty much only deals with the Senate as opposed to the House. The Senate has the power to give advice and to approve all treaties, federal judges, and other federal officials. Advice simply refers to the Senate is allowed to speak their mind and let the president know what they're thinking. Treaties require about a 2/3 vote in order to pass. Judges require 50%, although again, you can see the text on the right that historically has been higher. You would need up to 60 votes because because of the power of filibuster and the need to get a cloture vote. We'll talk more about that at another time. You also have electoral powers, and those have only been exercised twice in U.S. history. The House has chosen the president 2 different times, in 1800 when it chose Thomas Jefferson, and in 1824 when it threw the election to John Quincy Adams. That only happens if a candidate fails to win a majority in the Electoral College. In addition, the Senate can choose the vice president if no person wins a majority. The third non-legislative power is investigative power, and this is a super important power that is exercised very frequently by Congress. Oftentimes these investigations will happen in committees. Sometimes there are special select committees that we talked about the other day that are formed to investigate a particular issue, to examine whether or not laws are working the way that they are intended, whether federal officials are doing what they're supposed to be doing, or to address some kind of larger societal issue or problem. These investigative powers allow Congress to issue subpoenas. A subpoena is a formal legal request for you to come testify, and these can often be used for political reasons, right? To score political points, to get someone up in public and ask them embarrassing questions that are designed to score political points. Unfortunately, that does happen in our system. The last of the 4 non-legislative powers you need to know is the power of impeachment. And impeachment is the process by which we remove officials, federal officials, if they've done something wrong. There are 2 parts to the impeachment process. The first part is a vote by the House of Representatives. You need 51% to basically vote for an impeachment, and all that means is that there's enough evidence to have a trial. The second part is done in the Senate. The Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court will preside over the trial that is held in the Senate, and then you need 2/3 of senators to be able to convict someone in an impeachment. We've had 3 presidents impeached before. None of them have ever been convicted: Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and most recently Donald Trump. It's important to know that this process exists, and of course we would have had one president impeached. Richard Nixon would have been impeached and convicted had he not stepped down from office. Okay, I hope you took good notes and bring any questions to class.